To survive, the world is a ghetto. Of course, you know I couldn't come live on the BroDiallo show following the death of Bushwick Bill and not bang some radio clean. I know it's kind of hard to listen to the Ghetto Boys without the cussing, because we all know the Ghetto Boys how they get down. They keep it real. Uh, Rest in peace, Buick Bill. I remember when I was way back in, I think it was, '89. I had a job. Shout out to Norman. What's up, man? I had a job. Me and Norman had a job working at Wendy's on State Line. Y'all remember State Line and 75th Street? That was working at a Wendy's there. They had me working on the grill. They never let me on the register, which is smart on their part. That shows some very, very mindful hiring tactics, that they never let me on that register, because I would have robbed Wendy's blind. You know, hell yeah. Every job I ever had, I had to get them. First day I learned how to pimp the system. 2 steps ahead of the manager, getting over on the regular, cash-free, tax-free money out the register. That was me. That's my the soundtrack of my life. Hell yeah, by Dead Prez. Truly Dead Prez. Mind dead, brain dead Prez. I have to call Dead Prez brain dead Prez now, because apparently Stickman is happy that we have black billionaires. But more on that later, maybe. I don't know if it's worth talking about. Let me take this hat off. It's making my eyes look dark when I want to emit light and positive energy. No, I don't, but I like saying stuff like that to mock those who do. But anyway, when I was working at Wendy's as a child, they Grip It on That Other Level had just came out. To show you how old I am. Grip It on That Other Level by the Ghetto Boys had just came out. And at that time, I was pro-black and extremely positive. So I was there working the grill, even though I didn't eat red meat, stealing cookies and stuff, because they didn't put me on the register. And I worked the night shift to close it down. And so we had to scrub. I had to scrub those grills, empty the grease traps, scrub the front, clean the bathroom while they count out the money. Anyway, they would play Gripping on That Other Level. And I knew every song on that album by heart, because every night after school, I go to the library, and from the library, I go to work. And then, because the bus didn't run into the projects, I got off at like 10 o'clock. And I don't even think I was legally supposed to be working a fast food job as a minor that late. But anyway, they don't enforce laws. They just enforce status quo. Remember that as you go into life. But anyway, this sounds funny to me in my headphones, but I've been gone a week, so I'm not going to complain about nothing. I'm just happy the Lord put it on my heart to be here today. But anyway, they would play this every single night, and I would never partake in it because I was so righteous. And so they would play that song, and ain't no sellout, read these Nikes. And Bushwick Bill had a song on there. What was the name of that song? Lifting weights will make you bigger, but lift me, you'll be a dead ass nigga. You want to squabble because you think you're tougher? Boom, 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 squabble that, mother. Those are called bullets. They got them in every state to keep brothers like you in place. And since I'm a trigger happy, I can't even say the song. I know all the songs on that album. But that's Scarface. Because when that album came out, remember, Scarface's name was Action with a K. His name was Action. And then he changed it to Scarface, because when he did that song, I started small time, dope, gang, cocaine, pushing rocks on the block. I'm never broke, man. Sporting jewelry and the things that came with rolling hard. Anyway, when he came out, that song was so popular. Everybody was like, he's Mr. Scarface. So he dropped the name Action. Action is my identity. Whoever you be, don't. And changed it to Scarface. And remember, around that time, the movie Scarface with De Niro, was it De Niro? Pacino came out. And everybody in the hood, I've seen Scarface. I can remember my wife said she'd never seen it. I'd seen that movie about 30 times. Whenever I go, you go to any like little dope house, any little hood spot, y'all call them trap houses now. We weren't clever enough to disguise names. We didn't call them trap houses. We called them crack houses. Hey, let's open a crack house and hide it from the police. But the police knew early who the police already knew more than we knew about the dope gang because they were the one bringing it into the hood. But anyway, so I would shun the ghetto boys over time. But then as I got older, I went off to college. I started feeling homesick. I started getting like ghetto boys because that reminded me of my days in East Hills Village, my days hanging out with Norman, walking all the way from State Line all the way down to Prospect at 1 in the morning on a school night through the hood into the projects, with our headphones and talking about life and overthrowing the government and revolution. And when I was 15, 16 years old. So, even though I was positive and I wasn't into the gangster rap in my youth, I started to shun that mainly because I was seeing how the gangster rap impacted the hood. I remember when they started talking, the rap songs out of nowhere started talking about gaffling and boosting and robbing people. And like within a week, jacking for beats. They called it gaffling, jacking. And I don't get gaffled. I'm the one to do the gaffling. Like within a week, the whole hood, everybody was just doing these freaking Wild West robberies, like running up on people, stick them up. Where like we never really had that before. Like, but a song would come out describing some particular type of crime, and that crime would start happening in the community within a week of the song being released. So when I would see, NWA, Spice One, and all of that, it was reflected, and it was so much more vivid because prior to like the so-called gangster rap era, the primacy of gangster rap, go back and listen to mid 80s hip hop. It was very cerebral, intellectual, scholarly indeed. Just go back and listen to something that came out just before that stuff, like Illegal Business. I mean, these go listen to, Holy Intellect. Go back and listen to these 80s rap albums, early 90s even. And it was so, even though those same albums that got all this scholarship, where they were talking about literature and history and metaphysics, in those same albums back then, you had the album like Criminal Minded, where they would talk about drugs. But it wasn't a glorification. The P is free, or wah da da day, wah da 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 day, listen to my 9mm. You listen to that. But it wasn't, at least from my interpretation, a glorification or a promotion. It was just an articulation. And then NWA, of course, came out. And if you listen to NWA and the Posse, it was like the East Coast. It wasn't all gangster. If you listen to the album, they got This Is Something to Dance To. They had literally disco music. Now, the only thing when we think about those albums now is we all remember Boys in the Hood and dope, man, dope, man. But if you listen to the entire album, Eazy-E got a rhyme on there, Fat Girl. I got a fat girl on my jock. I got a fat, and it was a kind of a comedy song, where this fat girl's chasing him through town. He slept with this fat girl, and she wanted to continue the relationship, and she chased him all through town, and he can't escape her. It was like a goofy rap. And if you know Eazy, he was like 4'1.5". So he's a little guy. So you could imagine, I'm sure all these, I don't know, I haven't looked them up, but I'm sure they're probably on YouTube or SoundCloud somewhere. But Fat Girl, and This Is Something to Dance To, where Dr. Dre was playing literally go-go, disco, hip-hop, house music, was all blended in. Breakdance music. So it wasn't gangster, 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 gangster. The gangster, every rapper would do like a street song, a hood song. They would do a lyrical play, how good of a rapper I am. They would even do songs about relationships. And the songs with rappers would be like, we're poor, we're struggling. Remember, I drive a hoopty. I drive a bucket. I drive, this is before they started talking about their Lear jets. They would talk about poverty. They would talk about having a hole in the bottom of their shoe and how their toes would get a friction burns on their feet because their shoes were so cheap and burn out, So that was that time where you even the Ghetto Boys and DJ Quick, they would be obligated to say something positive. If it's not on a rap album, if it's not something positive, remember, hip hop was the CNN of the black community, they'd say in the 90s. But anyway, all that went by the wayside. And each NWA, which is kind of like the prototype, if you go from NWA and the Posse to Straight Outta Compton, and then I don't know, I'm skipping some albums, Niggas for Life, and then Easy Does It, some of the solo albums by the artist, it just got more and more degenerate. And more of the dance, party, comical, social commentary elements all got thrown out for just straight anti-social criminality, black on black violence. And of course that's by design. And then they pretended like black people really wanted, just couldn't get enough of this gangster rap, when in reality, when we look at the sales records and the demographics, it was white people who couldn't get enough, who were hyper consuming, over consuming, relentlessly consuming the black people, generating and killing each other. White people were the ones eating that up. And since white people had much more money, and so they were able to dictate what black art came into prominence through their consumption and their attention. So even though when hip hop was black, again, in the early days of the internet, there were all these websites, rap is crap, and white people were like, rap isn't real music, they don't play instruments, they don't sing songs. And if you go back and listen to, again, the early De La Soul albums, the first and second De La Soul albums, they were the first rappers to put interludes in there, and they would take these recordings that they would interview white people. And you listen to the De La Soul album, they was like, and they would go up to random white people and say, what do you think about hip hop? And they were like, rap sucks. There's no musicality. They got this one recording, this white guy said, rap ain't nothing but niggers talking. White folks didn't want nothing to do with rap. And I remember some of the earliest rap shows I went to. Heavy D and the Boys, the Fat Boys, Dougie Fresh, and white people in the town, when they would come to go ask people in the 80s, Kemper Arena, Worlds of Fun Arena, and white people would get hotel rooms out of town because they just knew it was going to be a riot. They didn't know what to expect. They were like, all these black people coming here talking this funny talk, playing this funny music, and they got all the blacks in the Midwest around Missouri and Kansas all riled up, and white folks wanted no parts of it. So I was in hip hop before white people came to dominate it artistically. They've always dominated it economically. But initially, the white people in hip hop were basically like, say what you want to say. If the money's coming in, we're pressing the records, we're getting the publishing, say whatever you want to say. So a lot of stuff got out back then that would never get out today. A lot of revolutionary music came out on it wasn't independent or underground. Priority Records, the biggest record labels at the time, had Poor Righteous Teachers, the cool communist rappers. And back then, there's a phenomenon where these people play fake gangsters. Back then, we had like pop music and hardcore rappers or gangster rappers that would try to turn conscious because it was more, go look up Def Jeff. He went from give it here, give me that butt, give me here, to doing conscious rap because it was more lucrative. But anyway, all that to say, rest in peace to Bushwick Bill. He is a part of the history. He is a part of the culture. I do believe he was a man of conscience. He was a greatly conflicted man. And I appreciate, if nothing else, his honesty. He really did talk about his struggles openly, from drug addictions to the morality of his music, the impact of his music, and over time. And I ain't saying you got to be perfect, but being a humanist, I believe in evolution. I don't believe in it. It is confirmed. Evolution is an absolute fact. It's not simply something we believe in. It's something we can prove. It's something we have evidence for. But anyway, so evolution, I appreciate people, even if they don't get all the way to where they're going in their life. I appreciate people that especially people who live in the public life, people who dwell in public spaces, who have a public platform, that evolve and that continue to evolve and cultivate and develop. You know, because a lot of people, when they get rich, when they get famous, they're like, I am the pinnacle, I am the standard, I am what you should strive to be. And you notice a lot of people, when they get paid, when they get up there, they start to regress. They start to devolve. So when you see a person of status, a person of wealth, a person who has fame, when you see that they are willing to stand up and say, nah, I'm far from perfect. It ain't all good up here. This money and stuff, it's all an illusion. When you have black people, black artists, wealthy black scholars, and any black person that has a level of progression and elevation, willing to admit that publicly, I think that is a service to us, because many of us will, most of us, the vast majority of us will never get there, regardless of what Will Smith tells you in his inspirational videos, regardless of what Oprah Winfrey tells you about The Secret and Asking the You. Most of you listening to me, including myself, the vast majority of us are going to die in the class, in the socioeconomic status that we were born into. And it's not because we're not intelligent. It's not because we don't work hard. It's not because we don't hold a vision. It's not because we got negative vibrations and our chakras are aligned. It's because the systems and institutions that govern our lives, that have unjust power over us, are designed to make sure class is a resilient and fixed system. If you can't get $1 billion because there's only a certain amount of capital and resources available. So if in order for you to get $1 billion, you're going to have to deny 1 million people the resources they need. So there were always, and has always been, a very limited number of elites. But elites used to say, I was born elite, I'm worthy of being elite, and if you try to step up, I'm going to cut your head off. But the problems with the elites figured out, because the working class and the masses and the peasants and the serfs outnumber us, it's best not to tear them down and talk down to them. It's best to pretend like they can one day become us, which will prevent them from getting ideas to overthrow us. It will get them to support us, to strive to be like us. So anyway, there's all of that. Moving on. I know I missed a week, and I apologize. I hate missing the show. There was a conference in Ann Arbor, and I don't want to talk down on this conference because some of these people are my wife's colleagues. You know, my wife is a scholar and a community psychologist and a researcher. And she, you know, if you know anything about there's data that needs to be shared. It's cooperative. Everything of that's productive and positive in the world is socialist. There's nothing, whenever you hear about competition and individualism and do you player, that's parasitic. But everything in the world that you value, I don't care if it's the internet, the automobile, or your clothing, or the jewelry you wear, everything in your life that has any value to you, I guarantee you, if you look at how it came into your possession, it was through people working together, cooperating, pooling, and sharing resources. Nothing in your life that you value is a product of competition and exploitation. But yet, we think that's how the world is set up. But anyway, she has colleagues, and they work together, and they share data, and they coordinate. And I went to one of the sessions, and my wife kept insisting. I'm in the hotel room. She's like, you got to come to this session. I'm like, you know. So I went to one, and she was like, you need to see what's out here in terms of that space. But anyway, long story short, if you've been following me on Facebook, you can know my comments. I did a Q&A from the hotel, and I had a couple of posts, but like I said, I ain't trying to cast aspersions, but it ain't my thing. That's not my bag. But anyway, I'm just saying why I ain't been here. I've been doing a little bit of traveling, and on the way back, we took a detour on the way back that we hadn't planned on taking. And we went through, uh, we were in Michigan, so we wanted to check some of the rural Michigan, and we wanted to check out some farms. We wanted to check out Indiana, some of the towns neighboring us, like Gary, Indiana, and just looking at how hollowed out America is, which makes me want to come and play some James Howard Kunstler. I don't think I'll share enough with y'all of James Howard Kunstler, because white people created this suburban project. Suburban America is a white invention, and it was one of the most horrific inventions ever created. Suburban life, suburban lifestyle, the suburban mentality, the suburban quote-unquote community has been one of the most failed social experiments in the history of humanity. And white people were in Suburbia, left us black folks in the inner city and moved to Suburbia, and they started to deteriorate intellectually, culturally, social deterioration. So now what's happened is we have this process of gentrification, and black folks all understand that white folks are moving back to the cities where they abandoned us and divested us and redlined us. And now we were living in the hood, suffering in the hood, making movies, and Bill Cosby was making TV shows like A Different World, saying we got to get out of the hood, and education is your only way out of the hood. And we had this whole hood culture, hood mentality. And then we had this whole other segment of the black community that was anti-hood, like the hood is the worst thing, living amongst and with other black folks. And they abandoned their cities to the extent that in the 70s and 80s, every major city in America had a black mayor, black city council. Even old racist, redneck Kansas City, Missouri, where I was born and raised, managed to have a black mayor. Because white people had so divested from their major urban centers that black folks literally were able to take them over. But because it was integrationist blacks and not revolutionary blacks who took over, just because of that, only thing we did when we took over, when we had majority, Detroit, New York City, Atlanta, Oakland, even Los Angeles had a black mayor. All the major urban centers. Detroit, who? Detroit? Washington, D.C., the nation's capital. Only thing those Negroes figured out to do, those educated, elected, talented 10th, was to just put the city on ice and wait for Whitey to return. I'll talk about that because I remember I was in Brooklyn, New York in the 80s. I was trying to work with I was working with National Black United Front in the 90s. Trying to say, let's consolidate power. Let's make it. Let's build that wall. I was fighting gentrification before it came. Because I didn't need to wait till the 2000s to see gentrification. They were gentrifying us back in the 1800s. But anyway, what can I say? But I'm getting way off topic, and I'm running out of time. Something that's curious. I have not watched any of the playoffs. I know Kevin Durant. I think it's the Raptors versus Steph Curry team. Warriors. Raptors versus Warriors. And I haven't watched any games. I really don't understand. I asked brothers I reached out to black men across America and asked them to help me to get invested. I wanted to learn how to give a damn about these damn games. I said, what is it? Nobody helped me. Nobody reached back to me. I wanted to know what was so stimulating and exciting about ball chasing. I wanted to join with you brothers. And I simply asked someone to explain to me why they were so invested in these games and what they extracted and how I could go about myself getting excited about rich black men chasing balls for billionaire white men. And I'm disappointed nobody came to help me. I thought if I reached out, somebody would reach back and say, well, here's why this matters. This is why basketball matters. This is why football and any other sports, this is why it matters. This is what you're missing, all right? Because I really didn't know, what am I missing? What's wrong with me that I don't see? So anyway, here I am, still on the outside. But every now and then, some tabloid soap opera stuff will happen in pro ball chasing. And that kind of gets my attention. So the ball chasing and which ball, who chased the ball best, who got the most points and the most assists and whatever. That doesn't, what contract, who got traded to what. That doesn't matter to me. But what does matter to me is the larger political, social, historical impacts of ball chasing. So there's this guy, Kevin Durant. If you're a nerd, if you're a beta male like me, I have to give you some background. Now all the alpha males, they already know. When I say Kevin Durant, I remember Little B had a song back in the day, Kevin Durant, Kevin Durant. I remember that. I can't tell you much about Kevin Durant except he's really tall. He plays basketball for the Raptors? No, the Warriors. He plays for the Warriors. And he was traded to the Warriors from another team. And he's apparently very good. Very, very good. Because people are talking about him all the time. By the time I know a ball chaser's name, you know he's got to be the cream of the crop or he's committed some horrendous crime. But anyway, let me just get to the cut to the chase. Kevin Durant hurt his leg. He got an Achilles tendon injury. Achilles tendon injury. And so he limps off the court. And then there was some controversy following where the coach or the owner or somebody got on TV and was crying like, oh, it's so bad that he was hurt. And then there was some further controversy because they already knew he was injured, but they put the value of the game and winning the game over his health and well-being. And then the dude, Kevin Durant's mama, came out and said, my son is a warrior, and Lord's going to help my boy. He's a God's warrior. He's a warrior and a fighter. And I don't know, maybe he is a warrior, but being a ball chaser and willing to destroy your body to catch a ball. And just, so here's the thing. Apparently, he was told, go out there and chase that ball, boy. Go play, boy. We got to get this championship. Go play. And he was in no condition to play, and he had no business being out there playing. He was already recovering from an injury. He hadn't fully recovered. And then the owner was like, well, the doctors cleared him. And they were literally speaking about this guy like he was a prized racehorse. As if he had no agency or autonomy. At no time did I hear any of the stories because I started following this because I followed this part of it. This part of the sports I like. This part of the sports interests me. Because this part of the sports, about sending an injured black man out to the field to further injure himself and to cripple himself, to damage himself for the entertainment of the white masses. And yes, there's some Drakes and Jay-Z's and Nas's that sit lakeside, but 99% of the people who buy them damn tickets are white people. Look at the stands. The demographics on the stands are opposite the demographics on the ball court. Or it's 80% black people on the ball court. It's 90% white folks in the stands because that stuff costs a lot of money. We sit at home, but we got our plasma TVs and our, carcinogenic chicken wings and watch it from home. And I guess maybe, brothers, y'all rather spend the $200 on the sneakers instead of spending $200 on the game tickets. I don't know. I'm just not in that area. Now, I'm not above criticism. I got my own time-wasting activities. Xboxes and whatnot. So I'm not even coming down on you for your time and money wasting activities. We're only human, flesh and blood we're made. But it's just curious to me because it's outside of me. So going on. They talk about, the doctor said this boy could chase this ball. These aren't the language. I'm putting it on my own language because I'm not just articulating what they said. I'm articulating the mentality behind what they said. They said he could get out here, chase this ball, make us this money, win us this championship. Go, boy. And he was too injured. And so now everybody's trying to cover up. And the team is saying, the doctors cleared him. And the mother's saying he's a warrior and God's grace will cut. Everybody's covering up. And one thing I'm not hearing is saying that what the hell did Kevin Durant have to say? This is a grown-ass man. And now I see, there's times when I worked and I would show up to work sick as a dog because I couldn't afford not to work. I didn't get no paid time off. I had no job security. I wasn't a member of a union. Oh, I was so thankful. When I got my first union job, I always wanted to be a member of a labor union. I've always been in awe. Like when other kids strive to be in the NBA, I strive to be in a labor union. So I was so happy when I got my union card and they gave me a little union pendant I'd wear on my job ID. And I'm union. Get out my face, boss cracker. I's union. That was just something a dream I had that I achieved. But anyway, before I was a member of a labor union, when I was working at Wendy's or Rally Burgers or for the Boys and Girls Club of America and other, hourly jobs that had I'd show up sick. I'd show up injured. I used to do paintball and basketball and martial arts. Sometimes I'd show up injured. I'd show up sick. I show up sleep deprived because I didn't have no choice. That's what us workers have to do. That's what wage slaves have to do. And sometimes when you go to work, my son just had major surgery. He shattered his knee skateboarding and had to get it open reduction internal fixation, ORIF. My wife was really upset, but I worked as a radiographer for over a decade. I've done literally hundreds of ORIFs, open reduction internal fixation procedures, with the ortho team, and I did fluoroscopy for it and pre and post X-rays. So I knew it was a routine thing, and I've seen people make full recoveries. But can't tell a mother nothing when her emotions go all in the tizzy. You just gotta let them feel what they feel. But anyway. I would go and see, I go to the hospital and I see physicians and nurses and cleaning staff and respiratory therapists. They look exhausted. They're working 24-hour, 48-hour shifts with no time off. And I know some of y'all go into these food establishments. Look in the kitchen. Look in the eyes of your waiter or waitress. People that clean, people you don't have to pay attention to, people that clean up around you, that provide services to you. Depending on where you live, if you got yard service workers, workers are exhausted. They're broken. Right? And that's for us poor people. But then you got multi-millionaires who can't take a sick day too. They tell us if we get money, we got power, and what you need in life, money, power, respect. You get the money, then you get the power, then you get the respect. So you would think if I'm a multi-millionaire and I'm sick or I'm injured, I'm going to stay my ass at home. Or hell, I'm not even going to stay at home. I'm going to go to the spa. To hell with you, boss man. But now we see it's not the money. We still don't have power when we have money. And even when we got money and influence, we don't even use it properly. Why the hell everybody talking about Kevin Durant? Why the hell didn't Kevin Durant, when they called him and say, hey boy, get out here, suit up? Kiss my ass. You see, I got a calf injury and I'm not good. I'm not whole. Step off. I've already made you $100 billion. Step off and let me rest. His own mother's putting him up on the auction block talking about my son is a warrior. No, your son is a basketball player, ma'am. He is an athlete. He is not a warrior. He is not protecting anyone. He is not defending anyone. He's not defending the nation, the race, or the borders. He is not a warrior. He is not a soldier. He is not enlisted. He is an entertainer. Officially, athletes are officially on taxes, on their tax form. Your son is an entertainer. And you're going to push your son out there to damage himself, to cripple himself for life, not for his own edification. Like my son broke his leg, but he loves his skateboard. He was skateboarding not for somebody else's entertainment, but for his own enjoyment, his own edification. And if you're going to break or damage yourself, at least so you can look in the mirror and say, some Sinatra, I did it my way, not Master's way. If my son was out here skateboarding for other white people, predominantly white people's entertainment, and he injured himself, I'd be outraged. And not only did that, he was healthy when he injured himself. He had no previous injury. But my son was hurt. Like my son right now is recovering from his injury. Here and do some more. And then I'm gonna get on there. My son is a warrior. No, my son is a wage slave. My son is a gladiator at best. And gladiators were property. Gladiators were owned. Gladiators had no autonomy or control. A gladiator couldn't say, I'm done. Had no right to quit. And when you got $1 million, when you got millions of dollars, when you got fame, when you already, don't he have some championships already? Do he have a ring? Didn't he get a ring last year? You already got everything the white man could give you. What more can he give you? And yet still you feel that obligated to put yourself, your health and well-being on the line for service. It is crazy to me. You know, I was barely making minimum wage, and when it come 2 days before payday, it was hard for my employer to tell me anything. I was the worst employee. Get my $7.13 check from Wendy's. Now I get that little check, and then I didn't have an account. Because poor black folks didn't have bank accounts, poor black people. So I had to go to the check cash and pay $12 to cash my $87 check. And even then, I'm like, you can't tell me nothing. What, I ain't coming in tomorrow. You shouldn't have paid me. I'm taking 2 days off. Kiss my ass. I'm going to show up here popping hot grease on my thighs. You know, handling this toxic meat. So I can't even imagine if I got $1 million. I hope I don't get $1 million. I come to Q4 Radio and flip over the damn console. I'm rebellious by nature. I'm rebellious. But you give me $1 million, even if I'm not injured, I'm not showing up. I'm going to buy some farmland. So where is this mentality? We think these celebrities, these black men celebrities got the exact, they just as scared as the rest of us. These wealthy black people, these famous black people, these so-called powerful black capitalists, they just as scared. Jay-Z with his $1 billion. Go back and watch his interview for his when he submitted his movie to what was the film festival? The Cannes Film Festival, I believe. And Harvey Weinstein executive produced Jay-Z's first documentary. And he was literally had Jay-Z in a headlock, walking him around to do the press junket. And whenever an interviewer would try to ask Jay-Z a question that went beyond just what Harvey Weinstein felt he should be speaking about, like when Amy Goodman came to Jay-Z and was like, what about prison abolition? What about the Rockefeller drug law? And Jay-Z was in the process of answering the question. And Harvey Weinstein stepped up and was like, that's enough. Hush, boy. Now get on out of here. He's had enough. He's done. And carrying this dude around like he was a puppet. So even our rich black folks don't represent, they're not really elites. How is Harvey Weinstein leading Jay-Z around by the nose? How the hell is Kevin Durant out there chasing balls with an injured leg? And having to undergo unnecessary surgery when he was already injured, when he had enough money to put his feet up and say, hell to the no. I'm not playing. Give somebody else a chance to shine. And then his own mother, instead of being like, how dare you? How dare you have my son, who has been working all his life to cultivate his body, to turn his body into an instrument. Living mathematical instrument, to be able to move like these pro athletes do. I don't watch the games, but I watch some of the highlight reels on YouTube. I see the amazing, what Del Jones called a mathematical computation with your body. And I'm in awe. I am impressed. But the conditions under which they express their superhuman ability, I cannot participate in that. Because everything else around it. You can't give me a shiny, delicious piece of rock candy and then submerge it in feces and serve it to me. I just can't partake. So I can't even appreciate the athlete, the black athlete, because of the capitalist conditions for which they express their athleticism. I can't take it. And that's all I could think about. If I'm watching the championship or the playoff games, all I'm thinking about is the bamboo floors. Who cut those bamboos? Who laid those floors? Who manufactured that basketball made in China? Where was it manufactured? All those shoes, you squeaking on the floor. Where were those damn shoes made? And why are these ball chasers getting paid so much? And what about the people in the stands serving the beer and the popcorn? Are they receiving a living wage? Do they get health insurance and retirement benefits? That's all I get. Just everything I see. I can't even watch the game. I get distracted. So anyway, we see the slave mentality is not solved. It's not fixed by money, by influence, by being the most famous black man in the world, and they still got us behaving like slaves. Because when Whitey say jump, you how high? When Whitey say jump, you don't say my leg is hurt, shut up, kiss my ass, you go jump, white boy. No, we say how high still. Why the hell didn't Kevin Durant sit his ass at home and put his feet up and eat bonbons? Or better yet, take his money and fame into the hood and do some liberation work. It's weird to me. I don't understand it. And you can't blame me for my lack of understanding, because I admitted that I don't understand it. And I reached out to you people, you ball chaser fans. I admit, somebody did try to help me. Chris, Chronicles of Niggatry, he tried to explain it to me, but it just wasn't, it wasn't clicking, Chris. I'm going to acknowledge your effort. I'm going to acknowledge your effort. You did try to tell me how this stuff was worth my time and energy. But I couldn't. Moving on. Speaking of black folks serving white folks, there was a brother in Pennsylvania, Everett Palmer. He was free and safe, but he had gotten a DUI in Pennsylvania. He didn't live in Pennsylvania. But you ever get it? I had a homeboy. We were driving from Missouri to St. Louis, and he got a speeding ticket for $300. And he was like, well, this is ridiculous. And so anyway, we eventually went to St. Louis, went back to Kansas City, and he was fighting it. So he had to go back and forth to some rural county in middle Missouri, southern Missouri somewhere to fight. So sometimes if you get a ticket on the road or out of town, sometimes you got to return to that town, especially if you're trying to fight the case. So, the dude went to Pennsylvania to speak to a DUI. So he obviously wasn't somebody, by the time you cross the state lines to go speak to and answer to your crime, you're obviously not an escape risk. They didn't have to send the bounty hunters to come get you. So anyway, long story short, he goes to Pennsylvania, York County, and to speak to the thing, they take him into custody, and he's locked in a prison cell. And lo and behold, 2 to 3 days later, they contact his family, like, this man is dead, come get the body. And like, he's dead, what happened? They were like, well, he must have gotten hold of some meth. It's like, the dude went to answer a DUI, high on drugs. Or he gets arrested to come speak to serve his sentence. Or to enter his plea for a DUI violation. And he gets drugs, gets high in jail. A former soldier, a paratrooper, a man who's, probably seen some things. These soldiers come back after committing atrocities overseas, and they self-medicate because the VA does not give them any type of treatment to help them cope with the atrocities and being a henchman for empire. But anyway, the York County Sheriff's Department, who had him in custody, said he died. They turned him over to the coroner. The coroner turned him over to the funeral home, and the funeral home made the body. So that's called chain of custody. If you've ever been arrested, you've ever worked in criminal, this chain of custody is very important. If you are in custody of the state, they want to know not only who has control over your movements at any given time, who has the right to put you in the cell, take you out of the cell, transport you from one place to the next, whether it's to court, even to release you. That is something that all detainees have to go through. I've been arrested before, never been convicted. I should play some Holy Ghost music. But most of my arrests have been either for trespassing, i.e. protesting. I have no credentials. I have no hood credentials. I just can't express that enough. Some people say that to me as if I should be ashamed that I haven't put in no work in my hood, whatever reputation my hood had a reputation. I did nothing to contribute to my hood credentials, my hood's reputation. Let me be the first to say that and repeat that as often as I can. But I still have found myself in handcuffs because I am a black man in America. So it's very, very, very hard to escape them handcuffs, even if you are a tree-hugging, hippie, vegan, law-abiding, drug-free, no non-drinking citizen like myself. It's hard as hell to stay out them cuffs. I know, and Bill Cosby lied to you, and like he lied to me. If you just do right, everything will be all right. No, Cosby. Now he's learning and living that lesson. But I digress. This brother, the cop said he got high on meth while he was in jail, or he came to jail high on meth. And when they put him in a prison cell, he started banging his head aggressively against the cell. Bang, 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 bang. And then he died of an overdose. He didn't even die from banging his head on the cell. That's what alerted him to that there was an issue. But by the time they went in to restrain him, he had already started to go into cardiac arrest and so on and so forth. So he died of a methamphetamine overdose in the jail. Prior to dying, he had some type of psychotic episode. And that's what they told the family. And so then the family's like, his throat, his heart, and his brain is missing. And so then they said, yeah, well, it's routine. They had to do an autopsy. The coroner and medical examiner does an autopsy. And so the lawyer for the family was like, wait a minute. They do sometimes remove organs. But it is not in any type of coroner's protocol to remove the throat. To remove the throat during an autopsy. That is not routine and that's not standard. The only time you will remove a throat during an autopsy for further examination is if the person had been a victim of choking or some other type of trauma to the throat, like i.e. their throat was slit. And I know a lot of conspiracy theories because, and hell, I need my tinfoil hat because the illegal organ trade, after drug dealing, after the illegal drug, the number 2 most profitable illicit trade in the world is illegal organ trafficking. And mainly they come out of China. But you get some big burly paratrooper, and if you see pictures of this guy, you can look him up on the internet. His name is Everett. He was a hulk of a man. He was a big dude. His mama said he had a gentle heart, but he was a giant of a man. So he had a big, robust heart. So it's all funny and fishy. And that take us back to Sandra Bland, who was in custody for about the same amount of time, and she, quote unquote, committed suicide. And you can't just put in, because if you're looking for this, you'll find that there's a lot of instances where bodies were in custody or sent to the medical examiner or sent to the coroner, and there's a lot of organs missing. It's quite common across the world, not just in the United States. They call them the harvesters. When I worked in St. John's Hospital in Queens, New York, they used to always, it was one of the places where this asthma center, where they would specialize in asthma, because in New York has more black males dying from asthma than the rest of the world combined. Asthma is an epidemic. And asthma is the kind of thing where they would always, this would happen routinely, on a weekly basis when I was working there I worked the emergency room and the trauma center overnight. And they bring in these young boys, muscular, six-packs, a picture of health. They look like Kevin Durant. And they'd be laid out on the slab. They say his lungs seized up. And we used to get the patients from the Bronx and Queens. These young kids grow up. They live in these projects and they inhaling dander from rats and fecal matter from rats and urine. And they got this huge bus depot in the Bronx. They used to. Now, this was back in the 90s and the 2000s, early 2000s. And they had these bus depots where all the buses for New York City will go to this one giant depot for repairs and to idle them. And in the wintertime, the bus drivers, they'd be in this long line, 100 buses in line waiting to go into the stall so that the workers, and they wouldn't turn off the buses while they were waiting in line. So the buses would be idling and emitting this carbon monoxide. And the black folks that live in the projects in the Bronx and Queens would just be inhaling this. So even from infancy, these young black men's lungs would be damaged and they wouldn't even know it. So anyway, when they pass, you'd have a healthy 16, 15-year-old. And the lungs are shot, but the heart, the eyes, the kidneys, pancreas, so, and the harvesters would come in and they'd have coolers that you use for your food. They have these special coolers. They look like that, but they're specialized, temperature regulated coolers. And they'd harvest the organs. And they'd have someone dead in the emergency room, and it was routine, emotions. They were like, oh, he's gone. We couldn't save him. Prep him for the harvesters. And everybody'd wait. And then the harvesters come in, pull the curtain, do their business, and then, the harvesters would get access to the body before the damn family. But we like being under this oppression. So we gonna rally around this. Oh, they stealing our organs. And then when we get sick, when our kidneys shut down, they put us on the list and let us die waiting on organs. While our black people's organs are gone. And they want our bone marrow. They want our DNA. They want our organs. But the thing is, we real content under this system. So let's say we fix the organ problem. Then we go to another problem. And then when we stop focusing on the organ theft and we go back to police brutality, they were like, oh, they're over there on police brutality. They marching against that. Let's go back to stealing organs. Oh, they paying attention to organs again. Lay low. Oh, criminal justice. False convictions. Redlining, housing, water quality, environmental racism. We just keep hot. Kwame Ture said, just overthrow the whole damn system. We don't have time to keep jumping from crime to crime, atrocity to atrocity, injustice to injustice. It's too much that we ain't got enough time or blood to shed. So he said, just overthrow the whole system. Where do they have power over us? Overthrow the whole thing. Because everywhere, in all areas of human relation. Neely Fuller told us. He said I think he started with 7 areas, went to 8, and then Kitty Owadu added diet, the conscious roster. He added, so in all areas of human relations, they dominate. And they commit atrocities and ongoing, unrelenting injustices against us. So flip the whole damn thing instead of trying to piecemeal this thing together. And speaking of soldiers, I know this is an old story, and I know y'all don't hang back. And I'm running out of time. But let's talk about this real quick, and then we'll move on to who's black and who ain't black. West Point on May 25th. I know that's ancient history because America moves fast, and we don't look back. It's a nation without a history, without a past. Anyway, West Point graduated 34 African-American women in its 2019 graduating class. And this went viral. And had all these black women in West Point uniforms standing on the halls of the main hall there. And everybody's like, yes, queen, black girl tragic. I'm sorry, black girl magic, and we boo boo. And again, I'm sick of y'all now. And ask you, what is West Point? I guess it's going to matter now. It's like Harvard. Black folks done heard about it. Now, how many little Negro girls and Negro boys are now being prepped for West Point? And West Point is the most elite military academy in the United States. And some of the most elite people in the world, in American history, have attended this academy. And who are some notable West Point graduates? Jefferson Davis. You know who Jefferson Davis was? He was the president of the Confederate States of America. He used his West Point education to lead the Confederate States and to maintain slavery. Robert E. Lee, the general of the Confederate forces, the #1 enslavers in America, in American history, are West Point graduates. And now we celebrating our children going there. But we ain't got to go that far back. Y'all remember Stormin' Norman Schwarzkopf? The man who started the war on terror? It wasn't George Bush the second. It was George H.W. Bush, Reagan's vice president, one-term president. His general, he was the first person to start it. And not only did Stormin' Norman start the atrocities that have killed millions of Arabs and Africans and Asians in the name of American freedom, he also was the guy who brought the Hummer to America. He was the first guy to have a Hummer retooled for civilian use. And so all the pollution that comes from Hummers, he was the first guy to retool a Hummer for civilian use. So all the Hummer drivers out there owe him some homage. But there's many other of these racist war criminals that come out of West Point, you know. And so when you graduate from West Point, because it is the most prestigious school, military academy, you graduate as a second lieutenant. And so second lieutenants in the U.S. military, even though they have a different name, I think in the Air Force, it's in all the other the Navy, it's a different title. It's not second lieutenant. It's the same rank, but a different title. But they come into a second lieutenant. And generally, second lieutenant leads platoon. So these 34 black women are going to become our second lieutenants in the U.S. military, which means they will be set up depending on what branch of military they're farmed out into. And many of the branches of the military, they try to recruit West Point graduates. Come to us, come to us, come to us. They want them to go to certain war zones and certain what they call field of operations, because you're trained in not just, and remember, they're scholars. The U.S. military, all you do is, I ain't with all that talk. You reading, you do all that talking, putting in this work. If you look at the most powerful military in human history, their leaders are scholars. Their leaders are not grunt soldiers. If you want to be a leader in the military, it ain't enough to shoot straight and be willing to kill innocent people. You have to be a scholar. So these warrior scholar women will be second lieutenants. They will be leading platoons of 16 to 44 soldiers, and they will be in Afghanistan, northern Pakistan, Iraq, Venezuela, potentially. Take part in the overthrow of Venezuela, of course, Africa, Sierra Leone, Uganda, Rwanda, and the Congo conflict. They can also be centered in Europe because the American nuclear arsenal in Europe and the NATO, they can be farmed out to NATO operations. This basically to say these 34 African American graduates, these women with all this skill, that inspire all this pride in you, basically you can be guaranteed that they are going to use all that skill, all that black girl tragic magic, in order to impose what is called full spectrum dominance. The U.S. military has a policy of full spectrum dominance. That means the U.S. military intends to dominate the air, land, sea, and space. Remember Space Force? Everybody was making fun of Trump for talking about Space Force, because there was a treaty, international treaty signed that they would only use space for civilian purposes. So when he stood up and said, we're going to have a space force, Trump was violating international law and should be arrested as an international war criminal, because anyone who tries to militarize space is an international war criminal, because it is by law and by treaty and treaties that the U.S. is a signatory to have more power than even the U.S. Constitution. So now these young black women will be engaged in full spectrum dominance of the imperial genocidal, ecocidal military. I don't understand why we are celebrating black women graduating from West Point. Now, if you call me in a year or two and say, guess what? There is a guerrilla military, a guerrilla armed forces fighting the fascists and fighting the imperialists and the multinational corporations in Haiti. There's a guerrilla freedom fighter in the Congo. There's a guerrilla freedom fighter in Sudan. There's a guerrilla freedom fighter raising armies and rising up against Bolsonaro in Brazil, leading black people and reinvigorated the Quilombo movement. And I'm like, really? Who is this woman? And you say, it's one of them sisters from West Point. Then I'd be like, Lord. So if they really go into, like y'all always talk about, yeah, black people go into the military, and then come out of the military and teach black people how to fight the same military that trained and indoctrinate them. That's a wonderful fantasy. That's a wonderful fantasy. And I know y'all like to look at these anomalies. Y'all don't even remember. Go look up David Fagan or Geronimo Jujaga Pratt. So yeah, there are one or two black folks that go into the U.S. Armed Forces and come out and fight on behalf of the people. But the vast majority of these people, for every one that come back to us, there's a million fighting for them. And a 1,000,000-to-1 ratio is not a winning thing. You're just better off just stepping out. If you make $1 for every $1 million you lose, you wouldn't place those bets anymore, would you, dummy? So no, these 34 women, even if all 34 of these women became revolutionary guerrilla freedom fighters, it would still be a zero-sum game, because out of these 34, there are still hundreds of thousands of black people that are patriotic Americans willing to fight for the empire and keep this system of full spectrum dominance. These 34 women are not worthy of our celebration. If anything, it should be a tragedy, something we weep and mourn and wail about if we were conscious. If we understood the true role of the military, but we don't. Y'all still run around going up to soldiers saying thank you for your service. Why the hell you thanking them U.S. military armed forces fighter or veteran for their service? Are you a billionaire? Maybe Jay-Z should thank them for their service. If you're a Koch brother, you should say thank you for your service. If you're a fascist, if you're an imperialist, you can go up to a soldier and say thank you for your service. But if you're a working class American, if you're a black person with any level of self-respect and dignity and loyalty to your race, you've got no business thanking any soldier. I don't care if it's a black soldier saying thank you for your service. Black soldiers should come to the black community and say, I apologize for my service. And I know y'all don't like me talking about this, because I shared some information on Veterans Day and Memorial Day, and even you conscious black people get mad at me because y'all got this fantasy about soldiers and warriors. These women are not warriors. They are mercenaries. The U.S. military is made up of mercenaries. It is an imperial army populated by mercenaries. And let me tell you something. All these uniforms. And another thing about military. You don't get military without rape. At the same time, y'all celebrating 34 African-American women coming into the military. The U.S. is reporting the highest rates of rape and sexual assault in the history of the U.S. Armed Forces. And the only reason it's the highest in the history is before they didn't pay any attention to it. And women in the U.S. Armed Forces, I played the tape. I played the recording of that sister. I have to go back to the BroDiallo archives. But they are raping women in the military with impunity. And we also know that black soldiers, enlisted men and black men and women, get higher rates of court-martials, higher rates of dishonorable discharge, higher rates of criminal prosecution and conviction for crimes in the military. So even when you fight, like Dale Jones said, we could be charging up the hill at San Juan. We could be fighting, killing, and dying for them, and they still hate us. And that has not changed. But I guess they'll make a movie. Like, y'all didn't go see that movie, Red Tails, black men flying airplanes for the U.S. military to fight. Take that, Mr. Hitler. Fighting Hitler on behalf of white folks in the segregated army, where they feeding us rotten slop, giving us damaged weapons. Anyway, it's really annoying that I kept seeing that pop up. Here's the thing that you can't understand, that I'm a black man and I could never be a veteran. And let me tell you something else about freedom fight. Nobody wants to fight. You know, the U.S. military commits atrocities, massive rapes, mass murders. The U.S. military is not heroic. I don't care about what the movies starring Common says. Common come out here talking about peace, and then he goes and make war, Pentagon, and CIA propaganda, hunter killer. Go look it up. Don't go watch the movie. Just look the movie up. Don't watch it. And at the same time, he comes to black schools telling black people to stop the violence. Why are you making pro-war propaganda? Damn hypocrite. But I digress. The military, you don't really, and we need the military. Let me tell you something about fighting. Humans don't like to fight. Humans need incentives to fight. I don't care if it's $1 million boxing contract, or that's why they always have these ceremonies and uniforms. Every military throughout history has had to give these honor and respect and duty, and give you a sword, and give you a shiny metal pendants, and give you epaulets and these funny suits, and these have you chant, and all this stuff is to gin you up to kill other people you got no business killing. That's all that's for. It's to gas you up to kill people you got no business killing. In my neighborhood, if somebody came now I know some of my neighbors I'm friendly with, some of my neighbors I know I say hi in passing, I don't know them that well, but if somebody came on our block and surrounded our block and said, we about to kill y'all, My neighbors wouldn't need no training. They wouldn't need no medals. They wouldn't need no ceremonies. They wouldn't need no chants and marches. People will defend their spaces. It is instinctive. It is evolutionary. It is natural. It is appropriate. When I'm in bed, like one time I'm in bed, we had this house in Kansas City that had a fireplace, and it had this grate, and I left the flue open. And we had this big metal grate in front of the fireplace so that to stop if the fire embers couldn't get out. So we were on the second floor. My wife and I sleep. My second son wasn't born yet. My first son was right across from us sleeping in his room. And that thing fell down because I left the flue open. Some wind came in and knocked over this grate. So I'm sleeping in bed and I hear this giant bang, this hard bang. And immediately I wake up, grab my pistol, and I'm running downstairs to kill anything moving. I'm thinking somebody had just boldly kicked in my front door in the middle of the night, and I was ready to fight. My adrenaline was pumping. I was ready to fight. I didn't need nobody to give me a title. I didn't need anybody to give me a uniform. I didn't need no chance. I didn't need to march. I was ready to fight and kill anybody I felt aggressively coming to harm me and my family and my property. Because that's natural. You don't need a freaking army for that. And nothing fights harder than a man or a woman defending their children, defending their family, defending their own honor. Nothing will fight harder, more relentlessly, and more bravely than a person defending what's theirs. We don't need the military. We don't need the army. And that's what the U.S. military is finding this out. The U.S. military is really good at fighting soldiers. They beat the hell out of the soldiers. The Nazis raised up an army, and America and the Allies raised up an army, and the Axis raised up an army, and the soldiers went toe-to-toe, and there was a grand victory, and there was a celebration, and you had the trials at Nuremberg. That was military versus military, and you knew who your enemy was because they were waving their flag, and they had their uniforms, and you're waving your flag. But then after that, the U.S. wanted to go and do imperialist warfare. They went into Korea and got their asses kicked because they weren't fighting soldiers. They were fighting people defending their families, defending their culture, defending their tradition, their way of life, their identity. They went into Vietnam. And I know we sit here in America and we pick up the paper while our soldiers are fighting to the halls of Montezuma, the shores of Tripoli. And we got all these patriotic songs. And we got these damn Rambo movies telling us that the U.S. military is just going overseas, kicking ass and taking names. And at the same time, we watch these movies and read these newspaper reports about the U.S. military kicking ass and taking names. Every day where you walk in American City, you got to step over veterans. They're out of their damn minds. 24 veterans. By the time you and I go to bed tonight, there will be more than 24 U.S. soldiers that will take their own lives. Like this brother that they ripped the organs out of his body. He was self-medicating himself. He was a paratrooper jumping out of planes to kill poor people. So what these soldiers are seeing overseas, and if you're going to be a black vet, come back and tell the people the damn truth. Tell the people what you actually did overseas. You weren't over there fighting for democracy. You were murdering for profits. Tell the damn truth to save another person. But a lot of these soldiers come back, the ones that don't go crazy and burn out, get drugged out, fall homeless in the street, they take the lies to bed with them. And it eats them from the inside. They start to have psychological issues and they start to deteriorate. Or they drink or smoke or sniff themselves to death. Because when they went to Vietnam, and if they take their asses into Venezuela, they're going to find out too. That's what it is. So all these people running around talking about, yeah, we enlist in the military. We need black men. You don't need that. You want to know about military strategy? Come to my house. I can teach you what you need to know. Because the military goes to the same place. You can get the full military library at your local library. Now, I don't care if you want to read about guerrilla asymmetrical warfare. You can read Kwame Nkrumah, Che Guevara, Mao Zedong, Ho Chi Minh, General Nyat. Or you want standard military, you want to know how they do. They got army training manuals everywhere. Wesley Clark, Schwarzkopf, all of them have written books and they have all published in academic journals. We don't need to go help the U.S. secure full spectrum dominance for an ecocidal imperial army. Stop sending black kids to enlist in the damn military. Stop it. I don't know how many times I gotta say this. And when we do get some to go into the military, it's nothing for us to celebrate. Now, one of those black girls coming out of Westport is gonna do one thing besides help advance the empire. I wanted to talk about Jay-Z's billions, but I don't have time. Let's go to who's black. Black people want to play games. Let me tell you something right now that every black people needs to understand. Racial purity is a myth, number one. Racial purity is a handicap and destructive to all people. Look at the races that engage in this, and I'm moving on from this military stuff. I don't have much time. Let's talk about who's black and what makes a black person black and not black. First of all, Neely Fuller and Frances Cress Welsing both said that there are only two races in the world when you get down to it, white and non-white. Because the people who came up with this pathological process of human classification and hierarchy called race and racism only recognize two races, white and non-white. And so then if you are in the non-white box, that's going to open you up for some things in this world. Unless you make some rough, hard decisions and willing to make some serious sacrifices. So we put the white over there. And so there's some points I need to talk about. Number one, racial purity. Racial purity, in order to have racial purity, you must have inbreeding. And when you have inbreeding, you open yourself up to mutation, disease, and congenital disease. That's all it does. You got to have a shallow gene pool. So for black people to get into this whole, you not black, you mix, you this, you that, that is going into what is called eugenics, selective breedings for phenotypic outcomes. We already know, it's already proven, because white folks have tried to say that black people have a criminal gene. There's some DNA sequence that is attached to our skin, our hair texture, our facial features, that makes us more prone to commit crimes than white people. And I know in 2019, we're all like, that's crazy. Oh, I got to get out of here. Damn. I got to start wrapping up the show. But let me tell you, on the white side, I should have been able to do this on one show. There are a lot of white people who aren't white, because white people play this same game about who's white. So let me list to you the white people who didn't start off white but got graduated into whiteness, and some white people that are still not considered white. Jews, Irish, the Roma people, we gypsies, the Romani people, the Mediterranean people, which is a whole new classification white folks made up for white folks of the Mediterranean regions, Italians and Greeks, the Russians and the Kazakhs. Their skin is paler than the average white person in Europe, but they're not considered white. The Turks and the Armenians, even though Turkey is in Europe, is a European country, part of the EU. Many of the Armenians and the Turks, even though if you meet a Turk in the street, it looks like any other average white person, the white people don't consider them white. So white people even play this game, the same games that black people are trying to introduce to our race, saying you black, you not black, and who is black and who ain't black. And this is being done in the most regressive, detrimental, irrational way possible in determining who's black. And I hate that I've ran out of time. I have to start, sticking to the schedule so that I don't step on the other programmers' time. So I'm going to have to start wrapping up the BroDiallo show. I'll be back Friday to wrap up this thing called Who's Black. I'm going to start with Who's Black, and I'm going to tell black folks who was historically black, who's traditionally black, who can currently be defined as black, and why do we need to have specific distinctions on who's black, and how do we define blackness and create a cultural, ideological, phenotypical a wall around blackness, not only to defend ourselves, but provide us a platform for securing power. Race matters. Race is an invention. Race is an illusion, but it is an invention and illusion that we can only overcome when we take the races out of power. You can't just do it in yourself. There's no such thing as individual liberation or individual awakening. If you cannot transform your power, your awakening, your resources into collective betterment, then it is an illusion. So anyway, we'll talk about this one more time, but that will be our lead in. I swear I will open the show with wrapping up this thing on who's white. Please remember what we said last Monday and today about who's black, and we'll wrap it up and move on to some other issues. BroDiallo Show, Q4 Radio. Please go help with the Patreon. Please make a contribution because we trying to stay here. And let's close out with one more track from the Ghetto Boys. Rest in peace, Bushwick Bill, and shout out to his family and extended loved ones, and shout out to Scarface and Willie D. Willie D has always been my favorite ghetto boy, even though he says some things with this Jay-Z billionaire story. He says some things I didn't agree with, and I had to let him know. I don't know if he read the comment, but I had to let him know how he was contradicting himself and what he stood on. So anyway, I'll see y'all Friday morning, 7 a.m. BroDiallo Show, Q4 Radio, and I didn't say all this, AM 1680, TuneIn app, iTunes Radio. You can also find me at DialloKenyatta.com. You can make contribution, become a show supporter at DialloKenyatta.com, or become a Patreon at Patreon/DialloKenyatta. Now, let's cue up the music.
Then it needed nothing.